The Great Depression forced millions of families to rethink survival in ways that modern life makes, well, difficult to imagine. Money was scarce, jobs were fleeting, and basic necessities like shelter and warmth were constantly under threat. In rural areas and even on the outskirts of cities, families developed ingenious ways to protect themselves from the elements using what was readily available, the earth beneath their feet. One technique stands out for its effectiveness, simplicity, and resourcefulness. A dirt shelter built partially underground, often referred to in surviving accounts as a root cellar house or earth-covered cabin. These structures were not mere survival hovels. They were practical, energy-efficient shelters that kept families warm in winter, cool in summer, and safe during storms. Spend the next minute with this story, because understanding how these shelters were constructed and used reveals lessons in resilience, resourcefulness, and self-reliance. For modern survivalists, homesteaders, or backyard experimenters, these dirt shelters are more than history. They are a blueprint for low-cost, effective shelter that works even without electricity or conventional building materials. How Depression-era families used earth as insulation. The principle behind these dirt shelters was straightforward. Soil is one of nature's best insulators. By partially burying a living space or storage area, families could maintain a stable interior temperature regardless of extreme heat or cold. Winter winds, which would strip warmth from conventional wooden cabins, were largely neutralized by the surrounding earth. In the summertime, that same soil actually kept the interiors cool, offering a real sense of relief from the heat. Heat that could otherwise make daily life just unbearable. Reports from the 1930s, they describe families constructing these small dugouts against hillsides, or sometimes excavating shallow pits lined with timber and reinforced with boards. Some even incorporated a simple roof made from earth, branches and thatch, creating a protective envelope that was both low profile and, honestly, surprisingly comfortable. The end result, then, was a space that felt insulated and secure, all without the need for stoves, heaters, or any sort of modern insulation. The design of these shelters was actually surprisingly sophisticated, considering how simple they might seem at first glance. While it may sound a bit primitive, these shelters often incorporated some really clever architectural details. Floors, for instance, were sometimes just slightly elevated with wooden planks or stone slabs, all to prevent moisture from seeping in. And entrances, they were designed in a way to minimize heat loss, often with a short tunnel or an angled doorway. Ventilation was subtly integrated, usually through small vents or little gaps, to prevent condensation but still retain warmth. And remarkably, some families even dug out multi-purpose sections, combining their living areas with storage for food, water and firewood. It was all about making the most out of what little space they had. Root vegetables, canned goods and grains could all be stored in the cool, dry sections of the shelter, which really helped reduce spoilage. It was a simple but effective way to keep food safe, especially during the toughest times. This dual-purpose design reflects a deep understanding of environmental engineering, showing that, necessity can inspire sophisticated solutions, even under extreme economic hardship. So, how did they maintain warmth and comfort inside those dirt shelters? Well, earth alone provides insulation, but Depression-era families added additional layers to really maximize comfort. Straw, hay, or even old blankets were used on floors and walls to further reduce heat loss. Wood stoves or small fire pits were common, with chimneys cleverly angled to prevent smoke build-up while distributing heat efficiently. Even a small fire could warm the entire space because the surrounding soil retained heat and, radiated it back into the shelter long after the fire went out. Families also used layering strategies for sleeping arrangements. Beds were often built on raised platforms with insulating layers beneath, while quilts and wool blankets provided additional warmth. By combining the insulating power of the earth with practical household materials, they created a surprisingly livable environment that could withstand freezing temperatures and harsh winds. How you can apply this Depression-era trick today? For modern survivalists, preppers, or off-grid enthusiasts, the principles of Depression-era dirt shelters are honestly incredibly relevant. A small, partially buried shelter can be built with minimal tools. A shovel, wooden boards, and natural materials for insulation. So, to get started, you'll want to pick a dry and stable spot with good drainage. That's really important. Then you need to dig a pit about 3 to 4 feet deep for a small shelter. Just make sure the entrance is turned away from the prevailing winds, yeah? After that, reinforce the walls using planks, logs, or even stones, if that's what you've got. And finally, build a simple roof by layering branches, boards, and a good amount of soil on top. Now, inside the shelter, it's best to elevate your sleeping or storage platforms to keep them from touching any damp ground. You can use straw leaves or blankets for insulation, just to make things a bit more comfortable and, keep the moisture at bay. For ventilation, what you'll want to do is drill a few small holes, or maybe leave some subtle gaps up near the roof. This helps prevent condensation from building up, which can be a real bother, honestly. Even in modern backyard or camping contexts, these shelters offer some really practical lessons. Temporary dirt shelters can serve as emergency bunkers, root vegetable storage, or even insulated outdoor workspaces. They really demonstrate the effectiveness of low-tech solutions, showing us that the best survival strategies often come from understanding natural materials and basic physics, rather than relying on expensive or complex tools. So, why does this Depression-era survival trick remain valuable today? Well, the dirt shelter is a reminder that ingenuity truly thrives under necessity. Families of the Great Depression were forced to innovate using whatever was available, turning Earth itself into protection. These shelters were inexpensive, effective, and durable, qualities that resonate strongly with anyone interested in self-reliance, homesteading, or survival skills. For history enthusiasts, studying these shelters provides insight into daily life during one of the most challenging periods in modern memory. For survivalists, it offers an adaptable, practical method to maintain warmth, store food, and create safe living spaces in the wilderness or off-grid environments. If you enjoyed learning about this Depression-era dirt shelter trick, make sure to subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this guide with fellow history buffs and survivalists. Preserving and applying these forgotten techniques helps us connect with the resourcefulness of past generations while equipping ourselves for the challenges of today.